but I'm just going to recording in progress. Okay. So welcome everyone. Welcome to, oh my gosh, we're in the vortex. Welcome to Rheumatoid Arthritis webinar. And I'm going to start sharing my screen, but just so you know, I'm Cheryl Crow. I run Arthritis Life, which is a little patient education company I founded. And one of my goals is just to help, educate and empower other people living with arthritis. So this is part of what I do. And so I've been started doing these last year. It's just an idea I had, like, what if we just had a webinar that people could come like a few times a year, maybe. Actually, I initially thought every month because I'm always like overly ambitious. And then I was like, that's a lot. So, hi, Melinda. So I decided to do it like every couple months, where I just give basic information, tips for navigating your new normal. So you're in the right place. Okay, so this is what's kind of confusing sometimes is that rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, and ankylosing spondylitis and spondyloarthropathies, they do have a lot of overlapping features. So I have a little extra light that I keep like fiddling with. Sorry. It's like I have glasses, so I can't use a ring light. But so if a lot of what I'm going to say, it does apply to psoriatic arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis. But I personally have rheumatoid arthritis, and that's why it's called like welcome to rheumatoid arthritis. So you're in the right spot if you are maybe a little confused or overwhelmed, like figuring out how to manage symptoms and cope with the stressors of living with this kind of condition, or feel kind of alone. Like, wait, I'm supposed to figure this out all on my own. Somebody help me a little bit. Now, I wish I could say this is a 2-slide presentation because I have like all the answers and I'm about to give them to you in the next slide, but I don't have all the answers, but I can help maybe sort through what are some of the solvable problems versus the perpetual problems. And I'll explain kind of that framework a little bit more in a minute. But so this is our agenda. I'm going to introduce myself, which I'm kind of doing now, and then give you a little rheumatoid arthritis 101, really, really, really quick crash course. And then some tips that I think are the most important when you're newly diagnosed or kind of in a new phase of your condition. And then we'll go over some more resources. So that's kind of our today at a glance. So the so what is probably self-evident, but it's always important supposedly to go over like, what's the point of this is so you can improve your quality of life. You know, learning how to manage rheumatoid arthritis leads to improved quality of life, better symptoms management, better well-being. And then my real goal and my kind of North Star is like helping people figure out how to live a life you love with rheumatoid arthritis. Like you don't need to necessarily defeat rheumatoid arthritis or beat it. I mean, ideally, yes, we would all get some sort of, cure. When there's a cure, that will be amazing. But right now, there's no known way to cure or heal rheumatoid arthritis that's guaranteed to work for everyone. So given that, we have to figure out how can we live with this. So that's my goal. So you already said where you're from, but if you haven't, if you just joined us, please let me know in the chat where you're from. I am on the West Coast. I'm born and raised in Seattle, but I went to undergrad in New York and grad school in California. And I've had rheumatoid arthritis for 19 years since I turned 21. And I also have a master's in occupational therapy, and I have, my son just turned 8. So I got to update that. I'm a mom, and I founded Arthritis Life, and I'm really passionate about patient education and encouragement. So that's why I do these webinars. So this topic and these topics that I'm about to cover, they do fit into the 2 programs I have. Oh, hi, Melinda from Michigan. So you got 2 from the Midwest, couple from the Northeast, and one me from the Northwest. But so I have developed 2 like formal programs that I'm going to talk about a little bit more at the very end that kind of can lead you through. Oh my gosh, Ian in London, jeepers. Okay. Wow. Isn't it midnight there? That's amazing. Welcome. Okay. Sorry, I'm responding to the chat. So I have a self-paced online course and an ongoing group support program that I run that kind of lead you through even more details. Because this is an hour today, which I am going to cover a lot. I talk really fast, but it's being recorded. So you can go over, you can review it slower later, but also I will leave time at the end for questions too. So why? So first of all, if you're, feeling overwhelmed, adjusting to figuring out life with rheumatoid arthritis or similar, why is it hard? You're not alone. The reasons are information overload, and there's so many unknowns, right? Are you going to respond to medication? Which one? How long will it take? Am I going to have any side effects? And then there's the social effects, like people not understanding that you don't quote unquote look sick, yet you have something that's a serious condition. And then of course, how is it going to affect my job, finances? So this might, I don't want to belabor this point too much. But hopefully, that, you're not alone. This is really common to feel, lack of clarity from your medical team, confusing medical jargon, no one teaching you kind of how to be a chronic illness patient. And then potentially, this is kind of seems like, whoa. What I mean by medical trauma are really like mental health challenges. Many of us, myself included, were kind of misdiagnosed or accused of being a hypochondriac before getting your diagnosis. And I think the latest studies were like it takes on average 3 to 5 years to get an autoimmune disease diagnosis. So that can be really traumatic as well. The analogy I always use is it felt like my body was on fire, and I called the fire department and they're like, there's no fire. And you're like, well, who's going to help me then? Like, they don't even believe that something's wrong. So that's really, really challenging. So those are all really difficult things to cope with. What have I not even mentioned yet? So I mentioned like uncertainty, overwhelm. For rheumatoid arthritis, like not the actual symptoms, like the physical symptoms, pain, different kinds of pain, different kinds of fatigue, like mental fatigue versus like, muscular fatigue. And then the other extra articular symptoms like, eye inflammation, lung inflammation, heart issues. So I'm just saying, like, it's hard enough, even just beyond the symptoms of joint pain. But of course, joint pain is like the hallmark sign of rheumatoid arthritis. So if hopefully this is sounding familiar. So no, again, you're not alone. A lot of times people feel like no one else in their life really understands or gets what's going on, or they try to relate and they're like, oh yeah, like my right knee hurts sometimes. And you're like, well, that you can maybe relate to part of the pain, but not the overall thing. So the overall experience I'm having. So, I'm going fast through these so you can watch the replay if you want to read them slower. So just a really, really quick, what is rheumatoid arthritis 101? Because, there's a lot of good resources out there on this, but I just put my own little spin, my own creative spin on it. Is that, arthritis, the word arthritis means joint inflammation. Arthro is joint, the space between the bones where the bones move. And then itis is inflammation, like gastritis is gastrointestinal inflammation. Arthritis is joint inflammation. And so it can be, you need to kind of know what the cause of the arthritis is. Arthritis, the word is not a diagnosis, it's a symptom. It's kind of like a stomach ache is a symptom, right? It could be stomach cancer. It could be you just ate too much today. And there's lots of different causes for that. So rheumatoid arthritis, that is a specific illness, a specific diagnosis. That's when, this is how I like to conceptualize it. Your immune systems accidentally attack your healthy tissue. So the fluid inside your joint that's really lubricating is called synovial fluid. And that, for some reason, your own immune system decides that's like a virus. I have to mount a response to that. And that drives a lot of inflammation. And then inflammation doesn't like to stay in one place. It likes to travel. So that's how we get a disease that starts in the joints, like rheumatoid arthritis, that has systemic effects, meaning whole body effects, your brain, your lungs, your heart, everything else like that. And that can be really hard for people to understand in your life, because they hear the word arthritis. Like, let me know in the chat if this has ever happened to you. If someone hears the word arthritis and they're like, oh yeah, I understand what you're going through, just because they think it's just joint pain. Let me know if you've ever had that. So over time, again, yeah, that immune response that your own body is trying to mount against your previously healthy tissue causes inflammation, and that can eventually, and the swelling eventually can cause, breakdown of the cartilage and the tissue. But it's distinct from osteoarthritis, which is sometimes not as much recently, but known as like wear and tear. That is a process that really does just, in general, like it occurs in the joint, and it's associated with aging and or, weight status. So long story short, yes, there are over 100 different kinds of arthritis. In RA, I'm going to be shortening rheumatoid arthritis to RA, by the way. It is one of the autoimmune or autoinflammatory types of arthritis, but the most common in general, the reason so many people think, oh, I understand what arthritis is that they think of osteoarthritis, which is that, again, associated with aging, associated with wear and tear over time. So the non-joint symptoms of RA are things like lack of energy or fatigue. I didn't even know my fatigue was from rheumatoid arthritis until I went to occupational therapy school 7 years after my diagnosis. So that's kind of why I get like Chicken Little about this. Like, I have to educate everyone so they don't experience what I did, but I just didn't know what I was doing. And fevers, sweating, poor appetite, weight loss, all these things, dry eyes. And then not surprisingly, depression and or anxiety. I mean, like, you can it would be abnormal, I would argue, to not experience any symptoms of depression or anxiety after going through all of this. So a couple quick things that, I wish that I had known when I was diagnosed, like lingo, a flare up. No one agrees exactly on like the definition of a flare up or remission. But in general, when people in the arthritis community talk about a flare up, they mean just a period of time when you feel worse than your baseline. And I kind of laugh when I say baseline, because it's still hard for me to even know like what should my baseline be, 19 years into it. Like, I know what a baseline feels like for having zero joint pain, but that's not necessarily a realistic baseline for me. It might be for you though, if you're more newly diagnosed. So anyway, a flare up is kind of like, you might've had, let's say your average is like pain of like 4 out of 10. And then all of a sudden it's like 7 out of 10. That's a flare up. Now, first of all, I hate the pain scale of 1 to 10. I find it very unhelpful, but I'm just using that as like a schemata. Yeah. And I'm sorry, Melinda and Ashley, the fatigue is worse. And I think, unfortunately, the fatigue, we don't have as good a tools for as the pain either. So, again, I'm going to be the first to admit, like, I wish I could just be like, this is what you do. I can give you ideas, but I can't say like, this is the bullet that's going to really take away your fatigue. And remission is known as a period where you have either no symptoms and your disease is not active. Oh, I should edit this. Or your disease is significantly less active than normal. So some people say, like, if your blood work shows no active signs of inflammation, even if you symptomatically have some morning stiffness and some pain, but it's not that bad, your doctor might classify you as in remission. But some doctors disagree. They say, no, it's only when you feel physically no symptoms and you don't have any active signs of inflammation in your blood work. So know that from the beginning, usually over time, people with rheumatoid arthritis experience fluctuations. It sounds really simple, but like, I didn't get that for a long time. I thought that my goal was supposed to be like to always feel in remission and never feel any flare up, so that I like failed every time I felt a flare up. But knowing that, I mean, unless you are able to find something that perfectly controls your disease, you should expect to have some flare-ups and remissions. And there are tools in the toolbox I'm going to talk a little bit more about later that can help. So in general, this is where it's a little bit of like a truth bomb, but it's a good and a bad. So technically, rheumatoid arthritis as a disease is progressive, which means it gets worse over time unless the disease is stopped. So the good news, that's bad news, right? We don't really, in general, want something progressive. The good news is that this is the best time in history to get diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. That sounds like a weird sentence, but there are some very, very good medications that can slow down the progression. But the not so good news is that they don't always work for everyone and they can have side effects. But the good news is, again, the prognosis has never been better for rheumatoid arthritis. And I hope that it continues to get better. I mean, selfishly, and for all of us who are suffering. So the medications is the next, leads me to the medications. So there are two main different kinds of medications. DMARDs, which are disease modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. So people pronounce that as just DMARDs. Two different kinds of medications that actually slow down the disease. DMARDs don't slow it down quite as fast as biologics, but they both can slow it down. And then the biologics are derived from like living tissue, and they are the ones that are the really expensive ones that insurance doesn't like to always cover right away. But those can really put people into remission really quickly. And then the other ones kinds of medications that are prescribed often or recommended for rheumatoid arthritis are non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, also known as NSAIDs, and then steroids or corticosteroids. Just a little tip, putting in the back of your mind for the two of you that mentioned fatigue. A lot of rheumatologists and potentially primary care doctors will prescribe patients with rheumatoid arthritis ADHD medicine, like stimulant medicine for fatigue. I don't know how they're able to justify it, because I know sometimes doctors have to write. I mean, maybe they just say, I don't know if the drugs are necessarily like FDA approved for like fatigue versus ADHD, but just so you know, that's like a kind of like a insider tip. Okay, so really, really quick history of rheumatoid arthritis treatments. So there really weren't any ways to prevent or stop joint damage from RA until kind of the late 80s to 90s. Both the DMARDs and biologics came out. But what I just wanted to, let you know, this is like from a scientific, doctor, medical journal. The progression from symptom onset to significant disability is not inevitable anymore. And RA patients can anticipate comfortable and productive lives on medical therapy. That was actually from 2012, and that the data continues to be really supporting the fact that, many people with rheumatoid arthritis are not experiencing that significant joint deformity that characterized it in the past. So again, I can ramble on about that forever, but so often what happens, I'll just tell you that people they get diagnosed and then they join a bunch of Facebook groups and they get really, really scared and because they think that because some of these groups have a lot of people that were diagnosed before the current medications, and there should be places for people to gather. And if you in this room right now, in this virtual room, were diagnosed before then, I'm just going to stop sharing for a second so I can see myself. That's my cat behind me, by the way. Then you might be like, oh my gosh, is that going to happen to me? Like, that's kind of how humans work, right? We look at other people's stories and we think, well, I'm going to be like that. But really you can't, it's apples and oranges comparing yourself being diagnosed in the 2010s or 2020s to someone diagnosed before the current era. So I really want to underscore that point, because people they end up wasting a lot of time worrying about things that don't end up happening for them because they're able to do well on treatment. So here's my 4 main tips. And this is way too much to do in a 1 hour. I'm sorry. I'm always cramming too much in, but I want you to get the most for your time. So first tool is just getting organized, because when we're overwhelmed, it's usually because we are trying to process too much information in a short amount of time. Again, I'm self-aware that I'm like overwhelming you right now with information. But, if everything's new, everything's piling up, I like to make a master checklist. It gives me that kind of validation, like as I'm checking things off, that I'm actually doing something, and also just keeps things organized. So having everything in one place also kind of helps you counteract that anxiety of like missing something, like what am I missing? So I did make a master checklist for managing rheumatoid arthritis. These are the things that, like, if I got diagnosed today, this is what I would do, is like go through all these things. I've kind of already done them now, but and so I will send it as an email attachment to everyone after, along with the recording, but you can also just go to bit.ly/RA checklist, case sensitive. So capital R, capital A. And that has, and I realized that this is the old version, this screenshot. The little thing here, I renamed the course to the Rheumatoid Arthritis Roadmap. But anyway, this kind of leads you through all the 6 main ways that rheumatoid arthritis can affect your life and like things you can do. Make sure to track your symptoms, assemble your care team, gather some pain management tools. And the other thing is to not try to do it all on your own. There are so many allied health providers, meaning non-doctor providers. Like, I am an occupational therapist. Obviously, I'm not going to be, I'm biased at thinking that occupational therapists are great, but we're not the experts of everything. There are social workers, counselors, and mental health therapists, physical therapists, family care practitioner or nurse practitioner, registered dietitians, pharmacists, psychologists, psychiatrists. There's so many people. And it's really a shame when people get diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and they're just being like given one appointment with a rheumatologist every 3 months. That's not really enough for most people to learn how to actually live with this. So that's kind of part of getting organized, is organizing like a team around you. It might also include other specialists if you have feet. pain, toe pain, you know, we might want to involve a podiatrist, or I have a really close relationship with my ophthalmologist because I have extremely dry eyes, all that. So, oh, I lost the chat. Okay, let me make sure I have everything in my ducks in a row here. So this is the part I like talking about the most, is taking care of your mind, because, you know, the symptoms, like what we're experiencing is like the, you know, one thing, but then on top of that is that they cause us mental distress, right? And so, and it's like with the fatigue, you never know, like if I did the right thing, would my fatigue be so much better now, right? Like that's kind of what haunts me many times. So the first thing, or I'm gonna talk about is mindfulness and acceptance. I know that sounds like a bad word, but I'm hopefully gonna make the case for acceptance, and then gratitude, and then like, okay, whatever tool works for you. So mindfulness, I know it's kind of like the key word or like the buzzword, but I'm going to be the first to acknowledge that mindfulness at being defined as keeping your attention in the present moment without judging it as happy or sad, good or bad. That's like the hardest thing to do when you have pain, right? Like pain is a signal to your brain that there's a threat, something's wrong, and we need to take an action. Like the last thing that your brain wants you to do when you're experiencing pain is like, let me sit with the present moment. But the reason I've become a convert to this is that as a tool in your toolbox, not something that you're supposed to be doing like 24/7. There are times in your life when you need to be in problem solving mode and like figuring out the tools that go in your toolbox, figuring out how to make the present moment better and more enjoyable, less painful. There's a time and place for that. But there's also a time and place for saying, this is what I am experiencing. Like this is my reality right now. And just taking a moment to check in with that and connect to your body and breathe, that has become really, really helpful for me. And yeah, Lisa, you're already anticipating my other slide, but yeah, keeping a daily joy list, like radically changing how you look at your day. Because there are always things that we could be grieving and upset about, and we should validate those. But there's always things that we can be grateful for at the same time. Really holding those two opposites in mind at the same time is a really important skill. So I'd also, what I've added a lot to mindfulness for myself is I'll start with mindfulness. I'll start with checking in with the present moment, and then I'll move to self-compassion, which basically is, can I give myself comfort in this moment? Like, because we all want comfort from others, or at least I'm a huge extrovert, so I always want comfort from others. But you, at the end of the day, you're the only one that's with you 24/7 that truly understands what you're going through. And so, yeah, and Sarah, oh my gosh, yeah. So anyway, I'll finish that. I think I was just saying, you know, giving yourself like, wow, this is a lot. Like, this is a lot that I'm having to deal with right now. And just giving yourself a minute to breathe and say, yeah, okay, like, can I give myself some self-compassion? Can I say, you know, you've come really far, and give myself some credit for like persevering? That can be really comforting too. And yeah, Sarah, it's so common and so important to say, like, to say, I'm feeling grief, I'm feeling worried. And when you said the word worry, it reminded me, this is one of the things my therapist, I went to see a psychologist to help with anxiety. She was amazing. And she was like, you're spending all of your present awareness, your present moment is all worrying about the future. What's going to happen in a year? What's going to happen in a month? What's going to happen? She's like, if you do that your whole life, you're never actually present in your actual life. That's right now. Like, that's kind of what, thank you for reminding me of that. When you said worry, I was like, yeah, that she kept saying all your worries about the future. And some people, this is the gross generalization, but people who are anxious often worry a lot about the future. And people who are depressed often worry a lot about the past. Like, oh, I can't believe I did that. That was so stupid. Or, oh, it was terrible. And the anxiety is about like, oh, I got to get myself ready to like, you know, to fight whatever threat is coming down my way. And it's kind of an illusion, because the present moment is the only thing that we really have, you know? So right now, like, I could look at every single scientific article and every medical journal. No one's going to be able to say for me, I'm on my 4th biologic in 19 years. No one can tell me if that's going to work for 10 years, is it going to work for 10 months? Is it going to work for 10 days? Like I could sit there and worry about everything. I'm really good at worrying. Anyone else that's good at worrying? I think probably a lot of us are. But and worrying feels productive because you're like, well, and I remember telling my therapist this, well, no, my anxiety is really good because it makes me like think of all the things that could go wrong in the future. And then I think of all like and this is not wrong to have parts of your life be like this. Think about what could go wrong, make a plan, I mean, I always joke like, if we go on a road trip, I'm like, everyone makes fun of the girl who has like all the extra backpacks and snacks until like the car breaks down. And then I'm like, oh, good. Cheryl brought everything because she thought of all these things that could go wrong. So it's like, it's okay to have that for part of your life, but the whole life is not very balanced. So that's my little spiel on that. So why do I like mindfulness? Because overwhelm. Okay. I forgot I already had this in the slide, even though I looked at this like 2 hours ago. A lot of us are overwhelmed thinking what could happen in the future, but now is the only thing that we're guaranteed. And I know that's really, really hard when you're diagnosed with something like rheumatoid arthritis that could look so different, right? You could get into medicated remission or unmedicated remission and live a life that looks totally the same as your pre-diagnosis life, or even better. Or you could end up having a really, really tough case and not responding to medicine or having terrible side effects. And no one can tell you for sure that one's going to happen versus the other. It's really is a guessing game. And so can you connect to the present and say, what's still possible, with this diagnosis, what can I still do with this level of pain? Assuming it's like, in science, they call it like the null hypothesis, right? When you're doing a scientific research study, it's like the null hypothesis, like NULL, is like nothing will change. So I know one of you is master in social work or bachelor of social work. So you can tell me if I'm saying that right. But, it's like, okay, the null hypothesis is this is what I have and this is what's happening. And, what can I do with that? Because like I kind of say sometimes, this is again, a little tough love, but like, unless you're in a coma, like there's things you can do that can bring you joy, that can bring you meaning and value in your life. It doesn't mean that you should feel bad about yourself for feeling bad. Like I also always say, it's not like just because someone else in the world has it worse doesn't mean that you should feel bad for having it as bad as you do. Like otherwise it would be only like one literal human in the entire world is like allowed to feel bad because they have it the worst. Like that doesn't make sense either. So anyway, okay. So my favorite approach is called acceptance and commitment therapy. And this is why I'm going to try to make a case for acceptance. Again, I did not get this initially. So if you were like, this sounds totally bonkers, that's okay. You're just taking after me. But, what you say is, okay, accept your thoughts and your feelings and whatever bodily sensations you're having. Acceptance actually means taking what's offered. What also can be thought of as like allowing, like, I don't have to like the present moment, but can I just allow it? Can I just say, this is what it is. This is what's being offered for me right now. Like I'm being offered fatigue and pain and confusion and worry about the future. Like this is what it is. Can I connect to myself and my thoughts in that moment and then make room for them to be exactly as they are? We so often like jump forward to solutions mode. Well, I just need to figure it out. Like if I get on the right website or I get on the right, whatever, then all of this fear will be alleviated. But you can, instead of doing that, instead of trying to soothe yourself in a weird way, you say, okay, this is what I'm feeling. I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to try to feel better. You ask, what can I do right now that's truly meaningful or important in my life, which is different from asking, how can I feel better? Then once you've identified an activity you truly value, you go ahead and take action. And it's like it sounds backwards, but you end up actually feeling better. But you can't make feeling better your goal. Again, I'm condensing like years of therapy, and I've also done a lot of continuing education into ACT as well. But in ACT, our main interest in a thought this is from Russ Harris, is not whether it's true or false, but whether it's helpful. So if we pay attention to this thought, will it help us create the life that we want? So we kind of learn to think about, like, I'll just say this really quick on passengers on a bus. With ACT, you learn to say, okay, all these thoughts are like passengers on a bus and I'm driving the bus. So a lot of times we're like at the whim of our thoughts. Our thoughts are like passengers on the bus saying like, slow down, turn around. You can't do this. You can't handle it. Like you're about to crash. you can, or you can have passengers on your bus being like, yay, you're amazing, or go faster. Like, who cares about the speed limit? Like, and with ACT, the idea is learning to just be what's called the observing self, which is just saying, I'm noticing these thoughts. Like, I'm watching them. I'm watching my life kind of like I'd be watching like a movie. And I don't have to, I'm sorry, I'm not giving like 5 metaphors on top of each other, but with the driving the bus, it'd be like, the passengers on the bus might be saying things like, you have to quit your job. You have to do all this. You can't handle it. And you could say, okay, I acknowledge those thoughts. I'm not going to try to argue with them, say that they're right, say that they're wrong. Just saying, but I know where I'm going. Where I'm going is I'm trying to live a good life as I define it, do the things that I love, even with this crappy hand of cards I've been dealt with my health issues. Like, can I still do that? That's the main question. So that being said, the other tool in my toolbox I do use more sparingly, but is cognitive behavior therapy. There is a lot of controversy in the field of chronic pain, particularly with cognitive behavior therapy, but it is, on the one hand, every place almost is like, this is evidence-based, to help people with chronic pain and anxiety. But the problem is that there can be a very, I think, ethically questionable power dynamic when somebody who's not in pain, who's like the therapist or the social worker or the psychiatrist, is like, I'm going to tell you, like, you're catastrophizing your pain right now. Like, meaning like you're making your pain like too big of a deal. It's actually not that big of a deal. It's like, that's really invalidating. Like, I don't like that. So there's parts of CBT I don't like, but this is what I do like. It encourages you to be a detective about your thoughts, which is good in moderation. So saying, are your thoughts true or are they a distortion? And you learn how to reframe your distortion. So my favorite exercise is called catching ants. And it's just catching automatic negative thoughts. So, I had one yesterday when I caught an error I had made in a calendar invite. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have an inner voice. Like, we all have little inner voices that's like judging us constantly, like there's the inner coach and the inner critic, and the inner coach is like, you're great, keep doing a good job, everyone makes mistakes. And the inner critic is like, you're stupid, like, how can you make that mistake? You're always forgetting things, do you know what I'm saying? So it's catching the automatic negative thoughts. We all have these little default stories that our brain tries to tell us, like, it's never going to get better, or something like that. And it's a way to say, okay, can I challenge, like, what's the evidence? So you learn to be a detective, like, okay, yeah, I made one mistake on one calendar invite. What's the other evidence? Well, I didn't make mistakes on 5 other ones. So I can't be like, I never do anything right. Like, that's an automatic negative thought you can kind of resolve, right, with data. The problem with chronic pain and stuff is that often the problems are unresolvable, in the sense that, like, there's no way to show like how much your pain is going to change or how big it's going to affect your life, because you don't have data for that yet. If you're worried about the future, you don't have data about the future. You're never going to have data about the future. So, okay, next one that I think Lisa mentioned earlier. Yeah, keeping a journal and keeping a gratitude journal and saying, what am I grateful for today? Oh, Lisa, wow, we're on the same page. Yeah, CBD has its place, and your new therapist has been teaching you ACT. That's awesome. And I will say, like, for the record, like, if you read some of the like books about ACT, technically it can be conceptualized as like as an arm of cognitive behavior therapy, because both cognitive behavior therapy and ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, the starting point with both of them is acknowledging that you're having thoughts. And that sounds really weird to be like, why is that? Of course we're having thoughts, but like explicitly saying, like, these are thoughts. Like, and in CBT, you're like, what's the evidence for this thought? Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it a distortion? But ACT is like, doesn't matter. It's just a thought. Like, it's just a thought. That's what it is. And I'm not going to try to change it. I'm not going to try to replace it. I'm just going to try to live a good life with this thought. And that's been like a huge burden taken off of me, to say, like, I don't have to like make my brain full of like happy, sunshiny thoughts to have like a life that's like pretty happy, So it's weird. It's like if your negative thoughts don't bother you, then they don't actually have a negative effect on your life. Like, I think negative thoughts all the time. I think you're stupid. Like, I can't believe where some of these thoughts come from. I just decide not to listen to them, So, I don't know. Am I delusional? You tell me. So, with gratitude, it can be so simple. It can be a list that you keep on your phone. It can be a journal next to the bed. It can be just verbal practice. Growing up, weirdly enough, not weirdly enough, my parents are amazing, but they had this practice every night. They have everyone go around the table and say something they're grateful for that day or something that went well. And it's not to say like to shame yourself, like, well, you should feel grateful because you have all these things. Like, that's not the point of gratitude in my opinion. It's to just take a moment and reflect and connect on what's still good. So that, again, gratitude alongside grief, it's, oh my God, I love this picture. But, on a serious note, in my life, like, we always wanted to have, 2 children, like, in our mind. We never for a second thought we would have only one child, not because there's something wrong with having one child. It's a miracle to have a child. Like, anyone who's been pregnant can tell you that. It's like every step of the way, you're like, oh my gosh, something could go wrong. But we always, both my husband and I are the middle child of 3, and, we just said, I want children, plural. But I ended up having a bunch of acute health issues on top of my underlying rheumatoid arthritis that ended up making it so that I just turned 40 this year, and we really had to have a line in the sand and say, like, that's not a good choice. It's not a good choice for our family to have another child. So I'm grateful, but I often have these waves of grief too, alongside. Like, I'm so grateful. I know so many people who struggle with infertility, and I'm so grateful that I had one child. That was, something that so many people don't get to have. But I also feel grief that, I had all these clothes, I had all these things I had saved, all these plans, to have 2 kids. And especially during the pandemic, it's like, oh, my poor only child sometimes. But anyway, still, I'm leaning into the only child life, but like, we were like his only source of, social interaction in person for quite a while. So, I often would think, oh, well, if he'd been able to have another baby, he'd have, but then it would also be a lot more work for me. So anyway, that's a whole other long issue. But point being, can we have both? Can you be grateful for what you have and grief for what you lost? Okay. And so then now I'm going to give you more practical tools. Again, they always say, don't try to do too much, but I don't listen. So this is called self-management, is like the official word for just learning tools and tricks to manage your symptoms on a daily basis. This is where occupational therapists really are kind of experts, but at the same time, patients are also experts, because you're the only ones living your condition 24/7. So evidence shows people who feel confident in managing their condition and knowing what tools they can use have better outcomes, but many patients are never taught. It's like, if only there were some people to help. Wait, there are people to help. There's just no one's referring them. So self-management, I'm sorry, I'm just putting this in here because I thought it was a really good definition from multiplechronicconditions.org. It's the ability of a patient to deal with all that a chronic illness entails. I love that, because it's like, that's how we think of it, right? We just have to deal with this stuff. It's not like totally fun, but dealing with symptoms, treatment, physical, social, lifestyle changes, and, being able to monitor your condition, how things are going, and make changes to maintain the best quality of life you can. So it's really the how of everything on my little checklist. So some quick examples for rheumatoid arthritis are exercise. There are so many paradoxes. I can't even, I could have a whole hour-long talk on paradoxes, but one of them is that unless you're in a really acute flare-up, meaning like really hot, inflamed joints that are really difficult to move, exercise, even if you have some pain, has a ton of evidence for helping rheumatoid arthritis. And I think one of the ways I think about it is, like, we all hear about morning stiffness, right? When you wake up in the morning, your joints are more stiff if you have rheumatoid arthritis. Well, it's actually inactivity stiffness. It's not necessarily morning stiffness. Like, if you were a night shift worker, you would feel, meaning you slept during the day and you worked at night, you would feel that stiffness after sleeping. It's stiffness that occurs after you haven't been active. So no one knows exactly why and how, but as far as I know, but keeping your joints in motion on a daily basis is really, like they say, motion is lotion. It's really helpful. And you can just start with what you can do. If you live in a house that has 3 steps to enter, you could just go up and down the steps a couple of times. You could do a wall sit. You don't have to literally go join the gym and do Ironman triathlons or something, but low impact exercise is super helpful. And okay, well, one of those are the shorter term. The longer term benefits for exercise would be things like, muscles support the joints just from like a mechanical perspective. Like the more muscle you have around the joints, the better your the easier it is for you to perform daily activities, and also the less fatigued you are, because if you have poor muscle strength, you're having to exert more energy to move. So fatigue that's actually an even bigger paradox, that exercise is associated in rheumatoid arthritis, specifically studies on people with rheumatoid arthritis who are given an exercise intervention, 20 minutes a day, actually have less fatigue and better sleep. So it's annoying. I totally get it. It's annoying to hear that you need to exercise when you're feeling really tired and you're feeling pain, but it's one of the most strongly correlated like lifestyle factors you can have. A lot of people talk about nutrition. The nutrition evidence is like all over the place. I mean, I can happily direct you to like some resources, but like you'll be like vegan. Some people are like vegan. Some studies are like keto or paleo, and you're like, these are like opposites. Like, how are these all working for people? Like, there's no, like, I think that the answer is, okay, the answer is that people are just very individual, and digestion and the relationship between the gut health and immune health is extremely complex. So I'm not saying, like, but what I'm saying about nutrition versus exercise is that the exercise evidence is like pretty uniform. It's like, you just don't overdo it, but get yourself moving like over and over again. That's what the evidence shows. So, and it could be like yoga with Adriene. That's something that a lot of people like to do. And so, but for food, now then there is evidence about just in general, anti-inflammatory foods. So, and avoiding pro-inflammatory foods. Again, I think that personally, my opinion, not that you asked, but you did come here, is that the benefits of nutrition are extremely variable between people. So I have been gluten-free, for example, for over a decade, and has had zero noticeable effect on my rheumatoid arthritis. So that kind of begs the question, maybe, why are you still gluten-free? Because it's not that fun. It's had a huge impact on my gut. I was always constipated before, not to do TMI, but this is, chronic illness talk here. And I'm not anymore. And I have better digestion, but it hasn't affected my rheumatoid arthritis that I could tell. Now, I don't know, right? If I could have a double-blind study of cloning myself and then be able to say, okay, myself eating gluten, myself not eating gluten, maybe my rheumatoid arthritis would have been, gotten way worse if I didn't cut out gluten. I don't know. But there are people who feel, other people, they cut out gluten and they feel better joint pain within like days. Like, so it's worth looking into it. It's just, it can be a really endless rabbit hole. So and there are a lot of people who are misinformed, who are like kind of nutrition. Yes. Okay. And Lisa, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do want to point out that it's one of the biggest traps people fall into is they get obsessed with like clean eating or perfect eating. And there's actually a whole eating disorder called orthorexia, which is obsessive. It's basically kind of like an OCD about eating only clean foods, only perfect foods. I'll tell you, I'll just be honest. I was in medicated remission for 7 years on Enbrel. I ate the standard American diet. I ate carbs. I ate meat. I ate whatever I wanted to. I ate McDonald's. Like, not like, I mean, I was an athlete, so I was still, careful to some degree, but like, and I had complete medicated remission from RA. So and I don't want to use myself as just like an anecdote, but like in general, like the evidence is like, you can control, there's so much better evidence for controlling it with like medication than nutrition. That said, everyone's free to, I just had a chat today of those of you who are on Instagram with Rachel and Erica, and like that's in their personal journeys, and they're like health coaches who have rheumatoid arthritis. That's important to them. They want to maximize their nutrition and have that help their rheumatoid arthritis. And like, if that's your goal and your value, you can do that. And I'm not like, I don't want to say that's wrong to do that. What I would say is, as a newly diagnosed person, I'd be very cautious with going down the rabbit holes of nutrition, and think about who it is that you're getting the advice from. Someone like, I can send you some others like Rachel, Erica, Jennifer, and Christina. It sounds like a band or something. They're all people who I really respect their training. And other people, unfortunately, it's just kind of a wild west. So other things, that's again, I'm telling you not to go down a rabbit hole, and I'm going down a rabbit hole. Protecting your joints, is a very basic thing that all people should be taught, using something like an ergonomic mouse. This is a mouse that has a different design. I'm holding it awkwardly to get myself in the picture without disturbing my cat. But instead of having my forearm pronated like this, like most mice, it's more of a neutral position, like a handshake position. And that's more comfortable for a lot of people with arthritis, including me. And, using compression gloves, using good ergonomics, like when you're sitting at the computer, to not put additional strain on your wrists or your elbows, is just super basic, helpful stuff. Putting together a toolbox of pain relief items that work for you, and it's, again, very individualized. I like, for topical pain relief, I like BioFreeze. Some people like CBD, lotions or oils. There's what's the other one that's always for arthritis? I forget. There's so many of them. But other people, they'll try BioFreeze and they're like, doesn't really make a difference for me. So another part of self-management would be, again, a mindfulness practice, for stress management, because here are things everyone talks about: diet and exercise. The two that I think are super important along with those are sleep and stress. The lack of sleep, and it can be a vicious cycle, right? You sleep badly, and then you get really tired, and you're overtired, and you're fatigued, and then you have pain because then you're sleeping worse because you have pain insomnia. So, but knowing that, I think it's more fun to work and easier to work on sleep and stress management than it is to work on diet and exercise sometimes. So I'm always like, try sleep. Try sleep. It's easier than exercise now. And then, some other pain and fatigue tools for pain, gadgets. I'm a big fan of the different gadgets that can protect your joints during daily activities. Using ice when your joints are hot and inflamed, or heat when they're cold and stiff. And then again, exercise to kind of get things moving. In the morning, I often will kind of do this, just simple, getting your range of motion out in your fingers. And then for fatigue, we have better compensatory tools than we have tools to remediate it. But in general, pacing yourself, planning your day ahead to where you have rest breaks, chunking tasks up, delegating. And then again, fatigue is beyond sleepiness. It's, it's a sense of profound, lack of energy that persists even with adequate sleep. But that said, lack of sleep can exacerbate fatigue. So, so this is just, looks like I'm floating, a little way to say, I really try to balance these two. And this is where I think the diet stuff can get a little bit toxic, because everyone's so focused on make the problem go away. If I just didn't have rheumatoid arthritis, my life would be better. That's not true. No one's life is perfect, right? So we have to spend some time trying to reduce our symptoms, make the quote unquote problem go away. But we also need to spend time working on, okay, what can I still do? How can I function despite it? Can I use my life hacks to work around existing pain and fatigue? So I want to put a plug out, because I'm going to tell you about my programs, and then I'm going to open it up for more Q&A. I will stay longer if anyone wants to ask more. I know poor Ian, it's literally middle of the night for you. But there are groups, and I'm learning about more every day. There's diagnosis specific groups, and there's some groups that are facilitated at a local hospital by professionals, like Hospital for Special Surgery in New York City. And there's others that are facilitated by lay people or peers. So, you could look them up on nonprofits, or the Arthritis Foundation has a monthly support group in most geographic areas in the US called Live Yes Connect. And then I have my own program, but I am going to tell you about my program, but I don't want it to be my program is the only program out there. There are others. There's just others that aren't exactly the same. So take a minute, recognize feelings are for feeling, as Glennon Doyle Melton says. And that's my dog, Teddy. And it's okay if you're having mixed feelings. And so the recap is: get organized, take care of your mind, learn day-to-day tools, and then get support. Really, you don't have to go through it on your own. That's if you don't remember anything else from this, remember that. And so, interestingly, even though we live in the information era, people with inflammatory arthritis are reporting, to their providers that they feel like they don't have enough information. They want to use their own resources to be able to engage in activities. And so this is my little soapbox. I'm going to tell you for 5 minutes about my programs, and then I promise I'll stop sharing the screen and have more open-ended Q&A. But so I do have 2 different, programs, and first of all, you can figure out what I teach in my programs on your own. In terms of like the information that I teach, a lot, I don't have a secret that someone else doesn't have, but it does cost a lot of time and mental energy and stress for people to cobble this all together on my own. And I know that because people who've taken my programs tell me that they wish they had just had this earlier. So there's just 2. There's the RA Roadmap self-paced online course, and there's a Room to Thrive. It's a hybrid. It's a support group plus little lectures, like what I just gave you, like that long lecture, a much shorter version of that, like a 15 to 20 minute version. And then we have a small support group that's like 15 to 20 people where we just check in every week, see how everyone's doing. And the goal is just to help you learn how to thrive with your condition. So it's open to anyone with, rheumatoid arthritis or a similar condition. And it's a cohort based. The Room to Thrive is cohort based. And I start it twice a year. So once April 2nd, that's coming up. And then once I start in October. So I'll put this in the chat, but it's 3 live hour-long video calls every month and an ongoing support group and a private community. And so I have some testimonials. You can look at these later. But then the roadmap, the self-paced course, that's really for people who are like, I don't really want to sit in a group and talk about my feelings. That's totally valid. Like that's not my total personality, because I am like super extroverted. But if you're like, I just want information, I just want it all right now, that's the RA Roadmap course is all the information. And it's but it's like my personal spin on it. So what I said earlier, I'm like, you can get this information elsewhere. It's like, depends on how you look at it. Actually, I am trying to like help you make sense of it and figure out like, where are there places where, like there are actual black and white answers, and where are the places where it's more of a gray area. And then the Room to Thrive is more the people who are like, I like to learn stuff. I want to learn tips and tricks and review things each week, but I also want to like connect to other people in real time. Okay. Oh, I did good. I didn't actually go over for that part, but I will put those links in the, I keep wanting to say show notes because I have a podcast, but I'll put links to those programs just because I always am like trying to make sure people know about them. And, but I also just want to open it up to any questions y'all have. I'll also put my email in here. You should all have my email, but it's info@myarthritislife.net. Don't even ask me how often I accidentally like misspell arthritis. It's really embarrassing. Arthritis. But is there any questions? Like, I know I just covered like 19 different topics in an hour, but maybe there's not questions. I shouldn't have gone so fast.
I have a couple of things. Okay, so the first thing is I wanted to mention a couple of things that you brought up.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was diagnosed with ADHD right before I was diagnosed with my arthritis. So I do take Adderall, and it did actually really help a lot with fatigue. Like I was taking naps every single day, and that kind of has pulled back a bit, but I am still like incredibly tired, just bone tired.
Yeah.
And also just the comment on you not having 2 children. I have 3, and they're stir crazy. They're driving each other nuts. They're yelling at each other. They're like, I'm looking over, my kids are piled up in stuffed animals. Like, it's insane. So, it's 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh. No, and that's so true. That's totally one of those grass is greener things, like where I'm like, oh, it would be easier if you had a playmate. And then the people who have more than one are like, it'd be so much easier if I just had one.
No, and my kids are feeling it too. Like they're very much like, oh, like we don't have any friends anymore, and we don't like this, especially because we homeschool, so they don't even go to traditional school. And so none of our co-ops and things like that are back in session still. They're all being incredibly conservative. And so there's just very few options to like get together to see people anymore.
Oh, I'm
So,
so sorry. Well, and I would think, yeah, I was thinking like I see pictures of friends who live in like warm climates, like in Florida or California. I'm like, it's so
mm-hmm.
much easier. Okay, again, this is grass is greener, but it feels like it's easier for them because they can get together outdoors, which is a lot
Yes,
safer,
yes.
But like you're in Buffalo, like how cold is it there right now? Like,
Yeah, we rode bikes today because it was 40 degrees outside.
oh my gosh.
It's a veritable
Wow.
heat wave.
Oh my gosh. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and that's good to know about the ADHD medicine that it did help with the fatigue to a certain degree. But yeah, maybe not a silver bullet in terms of making it go away completely.
Right,
But
but it's definitely been helpful. It's gotten me back, like 3 hours a day.
wow, that's a lot. Yeah, I am an
Um,
afternoon napper, so maybe I have to investigate that myself.
yeah, I was too. It's like my husband comes home from work and I'm like, bedtime. Bye. See you at
Exactly.
6 to cook dinner.
Yep, yep.
But I did have a couple of actual questions.
Okay.
Do you now, or did you ever like get a special planner or something to track your symptoms, and things like that?
Okay, and this is where I honestly like, yeah, I have tried different things. I have tried apps, and I will say right now there are more apps on the market that like can help people track symptoms than ever before. But to be honest, what I have come back to is a good old fashioned just literal note on on my iPhone. So I have one that says my doctor's name is Dr. Gorman. So it just says Gorman rheumatologist. And I have a little section for each appointment. So I had one appointment on, November 24th. And then I had an appointment September 17th. And I had like, I'll say like, and I'll write down in there like a running list, like what's been hurting or what's been going well. And then so that's like my between appointments one. But I do think that that it's really, and I do have an overall, I have something called a face sheet, which is where I keep like my master list of like medications and conditions and like health history. So I have those two things. But as an in between, a lot of people do like apps. The Arthritis Foundation just came out with one called 𝗪𝗻. I think it's called 𝗪𝗻 Arthritis. And I think that the reason that apps can be so helpful is that they can like, if you use your smartphone a lot, and if your smartphone is not causing you a lot of pain when you use it, which by the way, I do recommend like I have a little tripod I use for my phone, which can help if your hands are hurting because you put your phone, see that in the tripod, and then you don't have to hold it. But the apps, if you kind of on a daily basis get in the habit of putting your pain and fatigue levels in there, then they can analyze the data for you, and the apps can start telling. I'm looking on my phone to find my other apps. And I have a list in the course. I have a list of ones that there's one called, there's one called 𝗪𝗟, 𝗪𝗟. That's a general chronic illness or illness symptom tracker. What I like about that is that you can input your own symptoms. So I put like bloating, neck stiffness, shoulder pain, anxiety, like, and then you could rate them throughout the day. Whereas so many of the apps don't allow that customization. And then you can, so there's the categories are like good old fashioned paper planner, which some people like. And then there's computer based, and then there's phone app based. So I guess I should ask you in the beginning, do you have do you feel gravitated towards one of those like versus the other? Oh, I think she's probably
Sorry, no, I'm here. Yes, I I was in the comments writing all this stuff down. I am a paper planner. I love a paper planner.
Okay.
And I was looking at one. I think maybe I found a really great one. Oh, okay, I'll go look at it.
I love this I Heart Planners. I love her. Oh, wait.
Okay.
Oh, no, wait. Oh, no. This is Get Organized HQ. Okay. I'm like confused with who I'm even looking at. Yeah. This is one I have. I do like this one. I thought she was called I Heart Planners. I guess maybe that's the old name.
Okay. Because I found one on Amazon by 𝗪𝗪𝗱𝗃. I haven't ordered it yet because I can't I just like can't commit. Because I
Mhm.
keep thinking like I'll find something that's even better. Um, and it seems to be like really great. Like it gives you like the body to point out like where you're having pain. It gives
Yes.
you like a medication tracker for every day and things like that. Um, so it does look like it would be really useful, but I'm always holding out for perfect. And so I just didn't know if somebody had something that they recommend or um, and I actually don't mind digital planners. It's just not my first go-to.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, long term, I think that the reason the digital ones are helpful is really that there even are some that can communicate like literally to your doctor's office. Like you could send it to them before the appointment to kind of maximize like what you get out of the appointment so that they can see your data. But it's a little bit, it's not really something that's integrated in most places. So yeah, I think the best planner is the one that you'll actually use, or best symptom tracker is the one that you will actually use on consistently, and review. So I think, yeah, I think it is really a personal thing where which one will you, I will say, oh, I did use one when things were really, really rough for me. I had to use one for medication tracking that was round. It was called round. If you have a lot of medications, um and that you need like a lot of phone reminders for that, that is really, really helpful. Another one that I liked is bearable, BEARABLE. And it's just, well, I'm like a big design freak. And you can put mood, symptoms, sleep, energy, meds, supplements, and then even gratitude. And like one of the things is like, you know, the goal of tracking typically is to see correlations between things, right? To see like, when I exercised, did I feel better or worse, right? When I ate this, did I feel better or worse? So finding ones that are measuring what's actually important to you and what your quote unquote health behaviors actually are is also really important. Sorry, did you say, was there another question too?
Yeah, just one more.
Yeah, no
And
worries.
also as far as apps go, I also just downloaded one called Abridge, which is free.
Oh, okay.
And it's a voice recording app for your medical appointments.
Oh, wow.
That you can record if you're,
Oh, that's
like,
so
because I
cool.
do also feel like my doctor goes really fast. I
Oh,
haven't used it yet, but like I was just saying to a friend that I feel like my doctor, he's just so knowledgeable and he's been a doctor for so long that he just like gives the spiel, you know what I mean? And he's like, okay, so this is
mhm.
what's going on, this is what you need to do. And then also like maybe you should look at other research, like, and then like do some of your own research, and it's like, okay, breathe. I'll
Yeah,
see you
yeah.
in a month and I'll come to you with the other things I have to say or more questions or whatever.
Right, right, right.
But my
Okay.
other question was, you mentioned like your constipation and going gluten free and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you also have IBS, or do you think you're gluten
Yeah.
sensitive
Yeah,
or?
I do. I have irritable bowel syndrome, and I also had got diagnosed in 2003 before my RA diagnosis, similar to, I got like kind of two in a row. I got diagnosed with gastroparesis, which is like part of overall dysautonomia, which is like disorders of the autonomic nervous system. And it means like gastroparesis means slow stomach emptying. So that in of itself would make you more likely to be constipated because your whole GI tract is just kind of moving sluggishly and slowly. But yeah, the things you eat like gluten can, the theory is, can't make it even worse. So when I went gluten free, it got a lot better, but not completely all the way better. Um, and I also have developed something called SIBO or SIBO, small intestine bacteria overgrowth. I've gotten that in 2017 and 2018 because it can kind of recur. And so I follow a low FODMAP diet for that, which is like mostly anti-inflammatory foods, but you could also eat like a lot of highly processed foods and stuff. So I try, like, I don't have it in me to be like a diet purist. It's weird because I can be a perfectionist in other areas of life. I just find it like really exhausting. So that's why I was like, okay, you should see, if you have questions about diet, see, like, I'll give people the basics of like, look, these are the different, Mediterranean diet. This has these benefits. And even though I joked earlier that like these opposite diets end up working for people, the things that they have in common are that they're whole food based, minimally processed foods. It's just that some people, it's just really individual. Some people meat triggers their inflammation. Other people. Yeah. So sorry, I went in the rabbit hole again, but yeah. So if you have, that or issue too, yeah, I highly recommend my insurance covers it. Seeing a registered dietitian fully. I don't even have to pay a copay. I'm like, this is cheaper than seeing my rheumatologist. Like,
wow, that's nice.
I know. I'm like, what? I had to ask him like 3 times, like, are you sure? Are you sure? So I don't know. And yours might cover it too, potentially.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I feel so bad. I just saw an email as I was like, oh, let me see if anyone like had any issues getting in. Cause I checked it earlier, but I checked it again and there was somebody I accidentally, anyway, they got the wrong link, but that's okay. That's okay. Oh yeah. And Lisa's asking who you see as your rheumatologist, if you have a good one.
Yeah, I sent her a PM.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, good. Oh, you guys are so fast. Oh, good. Any other questions? We're like if you want anything that you want more resources on, I love like hooking up people with the right resource,
Hi, Cheryl. You see him?
Hi. Hello.
Yeah, it's late here.
Yeah.
I'm a night owl. It doesn't matter.
Oh,
I just came on because recently diagnosed, and everything is new to me.
Yeah.
I just wanted to sort of dip a toe in the water and find out, what I'm up for. So
Yeah.
I've had pain. I've had pain, and it's been, fairly bad. But generally, since they started me on methotrexate, fourth week this week, absolutely nothing. Pain, nothing. Just.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. It's worked so far. I know this. It's the first step in many. But I was diagnosed really quickly within 3 months.
Oh, that's good.
Me onto this drug, which I was really, really skeptical about. That's why I started researching. I saw your stuff. I'm a freelance graphic designer, filmmaker, and your stuff jumped out. So I know you're obviously into design. So I looked at some of your stuff, and I thought I was interested. So yeah, I don't really have any stories to share at the moment, and I feel sorry for us all. But I think I'm a very positive person, and I know it's not going to be beaten. But my job requires I work at a football club, so I do all their media. So I have to run around the football pitch with a load of 17-year-old kids who are in the peak of physical fitness, and I'm the little chubby middle-aged guy that they keep bumping into. But they bounce off me because there's nothing to them. So yeah, my job requires me to sort of stay reasonably fit. I'm just concerned that further down the line, it's gonna mean that I have to spend more time editing than filming, which. I'm going to hold that off as much as I can and work as hard as I can to sort of keep fit, really.
Yeah. And I think, first of all, it's a great sign that you're responding so well to methotrexate, because I think most rheumatologists now, say, okay, if you catch it early and you respond well to medications, you're expected to be able to, continue doing the things that you were doing pre-diagnosis, so I'm going to gently cross my fingers for you.
Yeah, well, I'm 58, so I'm a lot older than you guys. Mm-hmm. So, thankfully I didn't get it in the 30s or 40s, but it was an autoimmune disease that they think was hereditary. My father had an autoimmune disease that transpired with him getting vasculitis, which is pretty horrific.
Oh, yeah.
He held on for 15 years before it got him. So I'm thankful that it's not, I don't want to talk it down. I'm thankful that it's only RA as opposed to vasculitis, which is a whole lot more serious. Interested to see what happens, and obviously, if I can help share or, bring anything to the table, that's what I'm here for.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And Yeah, I think that is having a physically demanding job. It's kind of a blessing and a curse because it forces you to get out, it forces you to move your body even when you don't want to sometimes. But it can be, yeah, if things don't go well, it can be too much. And maybe, like you said, you will have to pivot, to more editing versus the running around. I think that time will tell for that.
Yeah. And where I'm based, it's sort of central London. So I live just on the edge. So it's only a 30-mile drive, but it takes about 2 hours. And when you have days where you don't feel so good, you're sitting cooped up in the car. You can't keep in your legs because it's the centre of London. And most of the roads are no-stop roads.
Jeez.
So that's what's going to stop me more than the running around. It's the travel. It's getting there, and I can't take a train because I've got all the gear.
Oh shoot!
Yeah. So I'd need an entourage of helpful people to carry everything. So
or you need an automated car.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, just get Tesla.
just take a masseur along, and I can get a rub down before I start work.
Yeah. Seriously, I'm like, that sounds really good. Yeah, like to be able to say, we just did a 4-hour road trip this weekend, like with some stops. And I was like, oof, this is not comfy,
Yeah.
It's 2 hours.
Some of our games are 3 or 4 hours away, so we have to sort of go across the country. And I've only got a tiny little car, so I'm up in it. But yeah, it's nice to know that you're there and everyone else is there, that if I get to the point where I need some help, then I've got somebody to talk to.
Yeah. And that's it's hard to know in the beginning. Yeah. Like how much should I delve into, to learning all this stuff? Because if you end up, being totally well controlled and at the trick site, you won't necessarily need to learn all the tips and tricks right away. Right. If you're not hurting. Yeah. But yeah, it is. I think it's more like important. I would say like I had like too optimistic of a view. And I'm not saying you have this. I'm just saying, reflecting on my own life. Like I wish I had taken more time in the beginning to learn about the different scenarios that could happen with rheumatoid arthritis, because I thought that because I was in medicated remission on Enbrel, it was going to last forever. And so it was like a huge rude awakening when it stopped working. But that said, if you know that's possible, then that's
I'm well aware of that. Well aware of that. I'm just waiting for the hammer to fall, but I'll back as much as I can.
No, and I felt so like I feel like, okay, I need to like tell people this so that they're prepared. But then I feel so bad because sometimes like I'll make a little video like, okay, when my doctor told me that my medication wasn't working anymore, and I was like making something kind of making a humorous thing for it. And then people are like, oh my gosh, wait, I didn't know. Now I'm like really upset. And I thought, oh geez, I thought it was like knowledge is power, but it also can be difficult, right, to hear that information.
Yeah, you gotta be careful how you use it.
Yeah, exactly. So, like with great power comes great responsibility. But
yeah, definitely.
Well, I first of all, I don't want to gloss over the compliment you gave my graphic design skills. Thank you.
Yeah, it stands out. It's really bright. It's got a lot of pizzazz. I like it.
Thank you. Pizzazz. That is one of my goals. Yeah. When I think so much of the health information is like depressing or boring or like
it's corporate. It's corporate. People try. There was one other question I did have.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Don't let me get off track.
Somebody told me that there's a project in, I think it's the UK. I'm not sure if it's anywhere else. And it's called Project 2021. And it is, I think what they're trying to do is once you've been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, there's a website, there's a big drop-down list, and arthritis is on there. The idea is that you start taking medical cannabis, which in the UK, the NHS don't register that as a valid medical aid. What they're trying to do is get people who are fortunate enough to be able to afford it.
Sorry.
You take it and then you do a sort of research project with them. They gather your data and then they use that in evidence. And at some point in the future, it will be presented as a viable treatment for these sort of diseases. And it's called 2021. The word 20 is spelled, you know, TWNTY, and then the number 21, and it's a company called drugscience.org.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat because I found it. That's really interesting. Yeah, I know a lot of people with rheumatoid arthritis. It depends on the state in the US, you know, whether it's approved in your state, but they do feel pain relief significant, you know, with medical cannabis. So I think that's definitely an area that research is going to keep finding more evidence for, you know.
Yeah, I think that if I get to the point where the pain is unmanageable, that would be something that I might consider without giving much away. You know, I'm no stranger. My younger days to reaping the benefits of such a product. So I'm in that mindset that I would be happy to give that a go. But I think now it's just an oil, isn't it? It's just
yeah. I think it's just,
and really,
oh yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say there's a lot to learn and to know about like cannabis and CBD and THC, because I always was kind of like I've never in my life smoked a cigarette. And I've always just been like, okay, DARE works. DARE is a program that we have in the United States for kids of like a certain age, where like cops would come into your school and they do these like silly things about like why you should not use drugs, and had all of these like weird, silly slogans. And it was like dare to keep a kid off drugs. So like, I don't know, it just really worked on me. But I was always like, I don't want to like none of that. And then I just like happened to go to a CBD store, because now in New York, it's been legalized like completely, including medically. So I can go to my neurologist. I'm actually planning to talk to my rheumatologist at my next appointment about a medical marijuana card, just to have it just in case. But in the research that I've done, like inhaling it in any form is not great. Just, you know, you don't want to inhale anything into your lungs.
Yeah.
But also, you can have the effects of CBD, which don't have any THC, and the THC is what gets you high. So you can take something that has CBD in it that can relieve your pain or help with those kinds of things, and you're not getting high from it. But then you can also have things that have a little bit of THC, just just a little bit of.
So sweet.
She said, I broke me.
Oh, I thought you said hug me.
She said she closed her hand in the door just a little bit.
No.
But yeah, so but sometimes like the CBD will be more effective with a little bit of THC, things like that. So it's really something interesting to at least like learn about a little bit at this point. And there are some really, really, really great people doing research out there about it.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely, and even, you know, I was surprised, but over a year ago, the Arthritis Foundation put out a little guide to like a medical, what do they call it, or CBD, you know, which I thought was really great. Yeah, CBD for arthritis pain, what you should know. I'll put that in the chat too, and I'll send you all the links after, when I send the recap email. I'll send these links too. But you know, it's because and I've talked to rheumatologists, and because I do some volunteer work with the American College of Rheumatology, which is like the professional association for rheumatologists. And you know, they're like, that's one of my top frequently asked questions. Like right now, everything's about COVID, or it's about, you know, medical marijuana or cannabis or CBD. And so yeah, it really is, you know, something that people want information about and want to try. And yeah, I mean, I'm so similar. Ash, it's so funny. You're like one of the only people who've mentioned DARE to me, because like I always say DARE to keep kids off drugs is like why I was so like militant about like not drinking alcohol in high school. It's like, you can't drink alcohol, you're gonna end up choking on your vomit in a ditch. And Ian, I know the UK is much more relaxed, I've heard.
Yeah, it's fairly relaxed, you know, especially around you know, you don't have to go far. Yeah, I'm going to go down the proper routes to gather it, but I could just stop off at the way home anytime and grab some. But
yeah.
Yeah, and that's Yeah, and that's the other thing about like going through legitimate sources is like the testing that a lot of places are doing on things, especially if you have a really like knowledgeable and ethical and like supplier. The store that I went to, the woman that I go to has so much information. She tries to get as much stuff as she can that's like local, and she only goes with companies that have a very specific way of producing so that you can actually get, you know, say every time I use this
Mhm.
dropper that's 0.25 milliliters or whatever, it is always going to have this much of this in it and this much of that in it. And just like really being sure that you're getting stuff with balance and that you're getting stuff that's consistent versus like going to go see Bob down the street and, you know, he's got whatever he's got and that's what
Yeah,
you've got, you know.
last year. No, I think if I was doing this, it would have to be legit, because I want to, like you're saying there, to get things in place for when it happens. I want to know that I can just reach out and grab it and it's there, and I've done the research and I know where to go. Whereas at the moment, I have occasionally I get up in the middle of the night. It tends to happen in the middle of the night, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning is when I'll have an attack and I can't move my arms, I can't move my legs.
Wow.
During the day, like you were saying, when you keep moving, it's fine. It's once I rest and everything starts to stiffen up, then sometimes the pain is so much so that I get up and walk around and just move. And then I go back to bed, and I can do that. I'm freelance, so I work for myself. So I can time, which is good. But I think the CBD looks like, I've read through the website, it looks like there's some good testimonials there, obviously.
Right.
Bad ones, are they? What did we do before conventional medicine? Hundreds of years ago, all these things, all these aspirin comes from a plant, all the sort of things that we turn into chemicals. I'm very much, if it can be naturally delivered, that for me is better. But obviously the methotrexate was a massive decision for me to decide to put something so heavy into my system. But really, up until now, I've never had to take anything for anything. And I'm not super fit and Mr. Healthy and everything, but I don't drink too much. I used to smoke when it was cool, and then I realized I was an idiot, and then I don't really drink. And now, because I'm taking this, I've decided to give up alcohol. It doesn't really bother me. But I think
Well,
the more natural products that we can get that help and alleviate is where I'll start. And when I need to hit the heavy stuff, I will.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And yeah. Oh, Sarah, I'm just reading what you wrote here. You were diagnosed very quickly. So you had pain in December, went to your family doctor. Wow. Okay. So you're waiting for your first rheumatologist appointment. Oh, yeah. So dealing with head to toe pain. Oh, that's one of the most challenging things, Sarah. I'm so sorry that, having to wait to see a rheumatologist is so tricky. One little life hack, if you haven't already done this, is to call the office and ask to get on the cancellation list, which is like, at least this is what works in my area, where you say, if anyone else cancels last minute, which is happening often because of COVID, then you can be on the list of people they call, like, hey, Dr. So-and-so has a last minute opening. I don't know if you've heard of doing that, but that's one thing to try to get in earlier. But it really is like early treatment, early identification is super, super helpful. And my advice for your first appointment is to bring like a list of, bring your personal or knowledge of your personal and family medical history. You don't have to have it written down, but just know, like, does anyone else in your family have an autoimmune disease? Does anyone else Oh, awesome. Actually, someone that worked for you. Yes, someone canceled and you got in sooner. I just had to cancel. I was supposed to see my rheumatologist, and my husband and my son and I all have like a stuffy nose and like a sore throat, but like I'm not feeling sick at all. And I took a home COVID test and it was negative, but you cannot, you're not supposed to go to the doctor when you're feeling that way, which I agree with. I don't want to expose anyone in case it is COVID or anything else. So, I just had to cancel this week and reschedule for 2 weeks. But anyway, bringing to your appointment your personal and family medical history, particularly anyone who has any autoimmune issues, and then your tracking, not necessarily you have to being like a rigorous tracker and like a journal or anything, but like what is the pattern of your symptoms? Are they worse in the morning or worse at night? And where are they? Because those two things are like really important for the diagnosis. And then of course the blood work, they'll probably have you do if your primary care didn't already do it. And then they'll do a physical exam, feel your joints, feel for the tenderness and swelling. Yeah. And take notes at your appointment. Yeah. At your first appointment. That's really helpful too. Great. Yeah. Anyone else shout out your ideas, but, I think that's one of the hardest times is when you don't really have that. It sounds like you have a diagnosis, but you need the rheumatologist to maybe confirm the diagnosis. I think that happened to me too. Yeah. So much blood work. Yeah. It's so funny. Like I have I don't know if any of you listen to my podcast, but I have certain phobias. Like I'm very claustrophobic, like not in an acute way. Like I don't like to be in a small space. Like I will freak out in a small space. And so I've gone through like therapy for claustrophobia, but I have no needle phobia. I'm like, okay, take my blood, take whatever. Like, it's just funny. We're all so different, but, yeah, some people really, and I have a really good vein. It's gigantic. Like you can practically see it. Like you can see it with the naked eye. Anyway, but yeah, blood work, imaging potentially, yeah, and keeping, you're doing everything you can to manage stress, sleep, movement, and getting a little bit of movement every day, eating, anti-inflammatory or cutting out pro-inflammatory foods, just all basic. Whoa, Ashley, 15. I don't think I've ever had 15. Usually they take like 4 or 5. Wow. Well, I'm going to have to wrap it up. Speaking of nutrition, I have to get dinner, but thank you all for staying extra. That's so funny. I'm a morning person. I'm not a night owl. So to me, I'm like 1 a.m. is like the middle of the night for me. Like I go to bed at like 9. So I appreciate you all being here. And I just got that email from somebody who I accidentally sent her the link from when I did this in November. So I feel really bad about it. I'll send everyone the link to the recording. And if you're interested in any of the programs, the roadmap or the Room to Thrive, I have the links here. I'll put them in the email too. But I also love just doing these, free educational talks and stuff, because it's fun it's everyone, when you've gone through something difficult, it's like therapeutic to help other people, right? To be like, okay, it's gonna, and I think like what I would say to you, Sarah, is like, I can't say that like, it's definitely like you're going to be feeling so much better so soon. Like again, like present moment awareness stuff earlier, like we don't know for sure what's going to happen in the future. Like no one knows, but I will say that like most people, it's trial and error, but most people nowadays who get diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis get put on a good treatment plan within, like, I would say, this is just my observation, within like a year, they get on something that works typically. So that's like, fingers crossed that you follow that trajectory, and don't get discouraged by some of the horror stories online, because it could happen, but it most likely won't. And a billion things could happen, right? We could all get in a car accident every day. We can't spend our whole lives worrying about what could happen, but do as I say, not as I do. But yeah, thank you all so much for staying. Wow, you stayed the whole time. This is awesome. Thank you. I'll see you on social media, some of you, or I'll see you on email. Bye-bye for now.